I am Jean Schumacher, founder of Plant-Based Academy, where I provide help, support, guidance, and resources to switch to a plant-based lifestyle and get your health back. Today, I have the privilege of connecting with Dr. Niki Davis. Dr. Davis is literally a rocket scientist, which just cracks me up. It's like, wow, that is crazy that you were doing that and switched all the way over to medicine. That just, and if you don't know more about Dr. Davis, I did an interview with her. She answers lots of questions about herself and what she does at love.life. Her passion is to educate others on how to prevent and reverse chronic lifestyle related disease through a whole food plant-based diet. So thank you, Dr. Davis, for being with us here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we've got questions for you. We're diving
All
in.
right. Well, we
So,
were talking about this before we started, how we could just talk about this for hours and hours. So bring
yeah,
it on.
bring it on, right? Right? It's the best. Well, the first question I have is from one of the people in the Plant-Based Academy. And she says, I keep injuring myself with leg issues like tendonitis, muscle strains, and a recent meniscus tear. And plus, I have an AC joint impingement. So she wants to know what foods can I or should I be including in my diet to help avoid these issues in the future and heal from my current issues. And she is whole food plant-based and has been SOS for since 2023. So,
Oh, well, great job. That's awesome. Some of the first things that I think about with muscle repair, tendon repair, making sure that not only do you have the nutrients that you need to be able to get that repair to happen, but also that your bones are strong enough to help with that as well. Things we think about are going to be like vitamin D, making sure that your vitamin D levels are okay. Vitamin D is one of those tricky things where really there's not a replacement for the sunshine. Yes, you can take a supplement to try to get your levels up into the normal range, but it just doesn't give you the same effect as having your body make it through sunshine exposure on your skin. So making sure that you're getting enough sunshine. And of course, you have to kind of weigh that balance of not getting so much that you increase your skin cancer risk, but you need to get enough so that at least you're getting that vitamin D level to 30. That should help you be in a better place to help with muscle, just muscle strength and muscle repair, just healthy muscles and tendons. And then omega-3 fats are really important for that too, for muscles. So omega-3s omega-3s and 6s are essential fats. And essential just means that you need to get it through your diet, that your body does not make those fats. Same thing. Fish don't make those fats either. Those are essential for them. And so we need to get that through our diet. And there are lots of things that contain omega-3s. You probably know, well, a lot of people think fish, right? You think you got to take your fish oil, but no, you can get it through things like nuts and seeds, soy product. My go-to is to just do a tablespoon of ground flaxseed every day. And that gives you your omega-3s. Leafy greens have good omega-3s. Both vitamin D and omega fats can be tested. So if you ask your doctor to, they can find out if your levels are okay. And then I would say another good food would be maybe soy. Soy has a lot of protein in it. And in fact, it's got a specific amino acid called leucine that's really good for muscle repair. So those would be kind of the things that I would think about for that.
and I just love walnuts because it's
Mm-hmm.
got that omega-3, omega-6 rate, perfect ratio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is, a lot of people in the United States are getting, much more omega-6 than omega-3, like 20 to 1, where it should really be more like 2 to 4 to 1. You really do need to make sure you're getting plenty of omega-3s in addition to the omega-6s, which are usually found in a lot of processed products.
Another question that came up was, since eating plant-based, I've noticed my skin and hair are a bit more dry than usual. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know that a plant-based diet specifically would cause you to suddenly have dry skin. And there are so many factors. It's hard to know exactly. I think first things I'm thinking of is, well, where do you live? What time of year is it? When do you notice this happening? Do you have any other skin conditions? So I don't know if it necessarily is the plant-based diet itself that is causing that, or if it could be the timing and it's actually something else. You do want to make sure that you're well hydrated. And that's probably the most common cause of people having dry and itchy skin is just that they're not well hydrated. So that would be kind of the first thing I would think of is just making sure you get enough water. And then, yeah, looking at if there are other factors going on as well.
I have a Tanita scale that measures 11 different variables of your body. It's a dual frequency. And one of the things I noticed is my hydration levels went up once I started introducing a smoothie in the morning and making sure, because that really traps the liquid and allows it to get into the system slowly versus like just drinking a lot of water and it's flushing in and out, you know.
Eating plants just in general is a good way to get extra water because a lot of plants have a lot of water in them. But then if you're doing a smoothie where now you're putting a lot of food in there that you normally wouldn't sit down and eat on a big plate of food, that allows you to get a lot more of that water and fiber.
And what you just said about the seasonal time, I noticed that is something for me as well, because my skin is always has been dry my whole life, and my hair is like, I don't know, like the end of a corn, whisk broom. It's not like this nice soft texture. So, but I've noticed in seasonal changes in the summertime, my skin doesn't need, a lot of like hydration or not moist like a moisturizer. But
Mm-hmm.
in this wintertime, oh yeah. I mean, my skin is like, sucks up moisture like to beat the band.
The other thing to consider too is that, your body makes these natural oils for your skin, for your hair. And if you are constantly washing away that oil, then you end up actually creating more oil because then your body is trying to counteract that. So if you are someone who maybe doesn't wash your face as often or wash your hair as often, then you end up allowing your body to really figure out that good balance of oil.
Stress is a large part of our life. Are there foods that can help with stress? And do you have any strategies for dealing with stress?
Absolutely. So, I'm a family medicine doctor, but I practice lifestyle medicine, which has 6 pillars, and one of those pillars is stress management. So it's definitely an epidemic. I mean, all of us have stress, right? We're all overworked. We all have so many things going on in our day. It's hard to keep up. You really do need to prioritize managing that stress appropriately because it can lead to a lot of poor decisions. It can lead you to overeat or indulge in something you might not want to eat. It can lead you to just saying, forget it, I don't want to go on that walk. I'm just going to sit down on the couch. Just, had too much of a day. A lot of this is going to be making the priority for yourself and just taking, good self-care. Part of that is figuring out what are the things that you enjoy to do, making sure that you're getting out and connecting with people. That can help with managing stress, being around people, just laughing with people, socializing. So, one of the things that I've done, I'm sure we talked about this when you interviewed me, is that I started a potluck locally. And part of it was to, yes, eat delicious plant-based foods with other people. But it was also for me to be able to, yeah, exactly, to be able to have that social connection, connecting with people. And that, even though I'm not even thinking about, okay, I'm going to go to this potluck and it's going to decrease my stress. I don't think about that, but it does, right? It helps me to just reconnect and have a good time. Making sure you're doing hobbies that you enjoy, thinking about the things that you enjoy doing and taking time to do those things. One of the things that I like to do, especially with my son, is a gratitude journal. So just every night we have our little journal and you write one thing that you're grateful for the day. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. It can be very, very simple. And I think that can help with stress management too. Just having that grateful attitude. Deep breathing techniques can sometimes be helpful. So if you're in the moment and you're having a lot of stress, it's like, I just don't know how to deal with the stress. Very easily you can do the 4-7-8 breathing technique where you just breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and then let it out for 8 seconds. And that's something you can do at any time. And you don't really need any practice doing it. You just do it. And that helps you get into that parasympathetic mode. So, there's the fight or flight, and then there's the rest and digest. So the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic. And the parasympathetic is when you don't feel stressed, right? You're relaxed, taking it easy. And you can kind of trick your body into that. And so deep breathing, slowing down your breath, actually helps trick your body into getting out of that fight or flight mode into that more restful mode. So I think that those would be kind of some of the things that I would recommend.
Or finding an activity that you might like to do. Like, for example, up here, one of our members has a singing group. And so she joined that, and that has become her haven, for, first of all, just this dealing with the stress because she completely forgets about it. You're focused in on that one activity. So,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I think about one of the activities that I've been enjoying lately, which is it's called relatefulness. And it's basically being mindful in connecting with other people. So it's not only a way to socialize and hang out with other people, but you're specifically trying to be mindful in those connections. And so I've really been enjoying that. That's been something that I've just loved adding to my list of things that I love to do.
Well, one of the part of the question was asking about if there's any foods, and one I find is those comfort foods. And even though that I know it's not going to be like low caloric density, that it's not going to help me with weight loss, I'll turn to pasta every time.
Right.
It's
Or mashed potatoes and gravy.
yes, my comfort foods. It just really helps me, just like this craving. I need a pasta hug. I'll just make a big batch of, the mac and not cheese sauce. I mean, the first time I made that, I was like, oh, I had like 4 bowls. I have no shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. So finding those things that, and maybe you enjoy cooking, cooking is something that I find really gets me very mindful, puts me in the moment of what I'm doing. I'm not trying to do a million things all at once, which is my normal. I'm cooking, it's just me focusing on chopping and cooking and it's just really nice. So finding things that also allow you to just be in the moment. Back to the food. So there is a phytochemical called quercetin that helps with mood. So I think it could help with stress. It's usually something we think about with like people with depression because it helps with serotonin and dopamine. Foods that are high in quercetin are going to be things that are, high in antioxidants. So berries, grapes, leafy greens like kale or chard. So you could also add in, some of those foods too that are good mood boosters.
how can I ensure that I'm getting all the necessary nutrients on a plant-based diet?
So I get this question a lot from my patients. First of all, I want to let people know that for the most part, if you are eating enough calories and you're not just eating one food every single day, that most of the time you get most of what you need. We've proved that to death with protein, especially, you're not worried about getting enough protein. There are tests that you can have run just if you're curious and you just want to make sure that you're getting enough of everything. And I'm happy to order panels for people where it does have, a lot of things that you don't normally check, right? Like zinc and magnesium and selenium and, whatever it is that you want to make sure that you're getting enough of. And I will say though, whenever I do check a big panel like that, it doesn't come back low. So there is kind of that fear of if I go plant-based, I'm going to be missing out on a lot of things. It just doesn't really happen. So the one thing though is that B12 is really important and it is really easy to become deficient in B12, whether you're plant-based or not. Just if you're not eating animals that eat B12 out of the soil, then you're not going to get as much. So I always recommend taking a B12 supplement and also just checking your levels. I check, I have people check theirs every year just to make sure that they're looking good.
And vitamin D, I would also recommend that one too, making sure you check that panel.
Yeah,
And
and unfortunately, that one is expensive to check, but I do check that one for people every year because I don't want people supplementing more than they need to. You really just want to get to that bottom number of the normal level and you don't need to go above and beyond that because there have been studies that show that people who take excessive amounts of vitamin D have more falls and fractures as they get older. So we just want you to have just enough if you're going to be supplementing.
right. But it's like, oh my gosh, I don't seem, and I live in New England, so I'm not getting
Right.
the sun like every day, like only like in the summertime. So definitely I need to supplement. But I noticed, like in the blood work that I've done, and I try and do my blood work, a couple times a year, my vitamin D levels are always low. And I even, really, I make sure I'm getting enough. And it's like, even 2,000 international units. And it's still, typically on the low side. It's like, oh my God, how long is it going to take me to build up enough reserve, to
Yeah, it's hard because you think humans did not live in boxes all the time. It's just not, we did not evolve to live in boxes. So there's a reason why a lot of us are deficient in vitamin D. We used to be outside all the time.
right, right.
So it's really easy to become deficient.
Well, what is your recommendation, for B12 and how often should you take it?
Well, it's going to be different for everyone depending on your levels and your history, but for the most part, most people do well with 500 micrograms per day or about 2,500 per week. And that I would recommend doing in the cyanocobalamin version. So you most of the time when you're looking at B12, it comes in methylcobalamin and then cyanocobalamin. And Dr. Greger did a really good video on B12 absorption and found that most people absorb the cyanocobalamin better. So that's, both are fine. But if you want the maybe slightly better version, that's what I would go for. And then the other thing is you don't absorb a lot of it. So if you have a supplement and it says on there, this is, I don't know, 1,000% the daily value, you have to look at the micrograms because you're not going to absorb all of that. In fact, you only absorb about 1% to 2% of what you take in. So that's why you need to take 500 when really your daily requirement, I want to say, is maybe 5 micrograms. I don't remember exactly, but it's a very small amount. And so 500 micrograms of something that's cyanocobalamin. And then if you can get something that is easier to absorb, so a liquid or a chewable that you can suck on, but just try to shy away from a pill that you're swallowing because you just won't absorb that as well as something that absorbs in your mouth.
Right. Interesting that you say cyanocobalamin because I'm in the methylcobalamin camp.
Ah,
I think just from my perspective, I mean, you can read, there's so much on both sides. There's this argument going on, but I think just from my background as a chemist, you're dealing with cyanocobalamin. That's in the cyanide family. I just kind of, I just have a thing about cyanide. Just saying.
Well, and like I said, it really doesn't matter. I think as long as whatever you're taking is allowing your B12 to be, that's the other thing is you want your B12 to at least be over 400. Yeah. The normal range actually goes down all the way to around 200, depending on the lab. And people can have symptoms of low B12 below 400. So if you check it and it's 220 and your doctor says, great, you're in the green range, you're fine, you could still have some symptoms like, we can get fatigued or a sore tongue, you could become anemic. So I usually at least recommend that people's levels get above 400 if possible.
We have seen you, myself, the doctors, a plant-based diet can positively impact your health by potentially lowering your risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, high blood pressure. But are there any potential risks or drawbacks associated with a plant-based lifestyle that a person just starting out should be made aware of?
We covered one of them already, B12, just making sure that you're getting enough B12. And like I said, it's not just a vegan thing or a plant-based thing. A lot of people can become deficient in B12 because we're good at cleaning our water, right? We don't have B12 floating around in our water anymore. We're good at cleaning our vegetables, so we don't really get it from the dirt where it comes from. You really do need to make sure that you're getting enough of that. And that's something very simple that you can check on a lab. The other thing that I would recommend is just making sure that you're talking to a supportive doctor or other healthcare provider, because if you are taking medications, you can very easily become over medicated very quickly. That's probably the number one thing. And I mean, granted, I'm seeing this every day, and as a doctor, like that's what I have noticed is people are making this change quickly. That's the first thing I talk to them about. Okay, here's the plan. As you start doing this, you might start feeling dizzy. And if you do, we're going to stop this medication. I want you to skip it and then give me a call, right? Or you're going to start seeing your blood sugar improve. And this is how much insulin you're on. Let's go ahead and cut it in half today because we know that it's going to drop quickly as you start making this change. You do tend to see a lot of improvements fairly quickly by switching to a plant-based diet. Everybody's a little different. Some things are going to be faster for some people and slower for others. But in general, if you're on medication, you need to talk to somebody because that can be a problem if you become over medicated by getting yourself healthy, right?
Oh my God. One of the best ones I saw was one of my clients went from a cholesterol of 279 to 99.
Wow. The total?
3 weeks. Because he had already had previous blood work done, and then he started with me, and then in 3 weeks he had another round of blood work scheduled. And I was shocked.
That's incredible.
Whoa, that's impressive.
I mean, that just shows you the power of this, right? I mean, there's no medication on the planet that could get anywhere near that.
No, for sure. 100%. So yeah, no, you're right. You hit that nail on the head with especially the medications for somebody who's dealing with who's diabetic or dealing with hypertension, you've got to be uber careful about how much
Yeah.
medication you're taking.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, the side effects are things that you want. I mean, you're going to feel better. You're going to have weight loss. You're going to, your blood pressure is going to improve. Your cholesterol is going to drop. You're just more energy. You're going to want to, it's interesting when you make those kinds of changes with your diet, then all of a sudden it makes you want to do more things that are better for you, like getting out and going on those walks and exercising and yeah, hanging out with other plant-based folk, eating food.
Right? We're already planning Thanksgiving. I mean, we're, you know,
I
Hope
love
is
it. I
bringing
love
this,
it.
he's bringing that, and we got two Thanksgivings because we get together with our, a group of people here, but also we do them with our potluck. And I'm like, yeah, no, you have to make this for the potluck. Like, you know, there's certain things that are just each year. It's like that's part of like the tradition now is like that's part of it for sure. Plus,
That's fun.
I think the Thanksgiving foods are some of the easiest. I mean, apart from the turkey, forget the turkey, but I think the plant-based foods are the easiest to mimic what we traditionally had, like at Thanksgiving. You can make a bread stuffing and you have mashed potatoes and gravy. Who doesn't love mashed potatoes and gravy? I mean, please. It's
It's
like,
the best food on the planet.
oh, it's the ultimate comfort food. So when you hang out with other people that you don't have to ask that question, oh my God, where am I getting my protein? Does this have oil in it? They know the
Yeah.
rules going into this. And when you get your peeps and you get your group that you hang out with, it's just so much fun. And I mean, it's not to say that I don't hang out with other people, and other friends, but it just makes it so much easier, when you have that circle of friends that you don't have to ask. You don't have
Yeah. They get it. They get it. Yeah. It's nice. And I love what you said about Thanksgiving dinner because I agree. When I think about my childhood and having Thanksgiving, what was the stuff that I looked forward to the most? It wasn't the turkey, right? But I never really liked meat as a kid. I thought it was gross anyway. So, but mashed potatoes and gravy and the rolls, right? Put in the olives on the ends of your fingers. So it was always the plant foods that I enjoyed. And I make a very similar Thanksgiving dinner to what I had as a kid, with instead of the turkey, it's the tofu loaf. And I do the mashed potatoes and gravy. I do, green beans, or now I love making this sesame kale salad that is a McDougall recipe. But, and my mom's stuffing, I make something that tastes just like what my mom's stuffing was. It's just a healthy version without all the butter and, you know, turkey fat and everything that was in it.
I have to say one thing that I love, adore, love about this lifestyle is the cleanup, how easy it is. I mean, I remember one of the last Thanksgivings we had together as a family, and I was cleaning up in the kitchen, and I got the turkey platter, and you're just like, ew, the oil, the grease, and you're like, oh my God, that's what's going used
Yeah.
to go around in me, you know.
Yeah. It's so true. Yeah. Cleanup is really, really simple for the most part.
Well, how can I address any concerns or skepticisms from friends and family about my decision to go plant-based?
I guess, first of all, I always like to think about something that Dr. Doug Lisle says. He's a psychologist and he helped write The Pleasure Trap with Dr. Goldhammer. And he talks a lot about like the social implications of eating differently than other people. And I really like that what he says is to really take a step back and instead of trying to explain to people why you're doing what you're doing and why your way of eating is better, that you really just kind of take it as, hey, this is just something I'm doing for myself. I don't know that it's for everyone. It seems to be working for me. I don't know. It's not a big deal, and not make it feel so on the offense. Because if you bring it up that way, then people, oh, well, you're not judging me. This is just something you're doing for yourself. And then people get curious about it and they ask more questions. So I think that's probably one of the big things. Like I'll get invited to an event where I know it's not going to be plant-based at all. And I'm going to bring something to share, to eat. And I always let the host know, hey, just, I'm one of those weird vegans, right? I just kind of put it out there that I'm a weirdo. And then sure enough, most of the time people come back and like, oh, well, I'm trying to cut back on meat. it's not a big deal. Like they try to comfort you instead of getting offended. And then the other thing I would say is just educating yourself. So knowing those very common questions that people are going to ask and not letting it get to you or bother you, because we all started somewhere, right? There was probably a time in my life where I wondered, how are those vegans getting their protein? Right? I probably thought that at some point. Who knows? But so just remembering that not everybody is where we are today, people who've been doing it for a really long time. And just being prepared that if somebody really asks that question, oh, well, thanks for asking that. Actually, it turns out that all plants have protein. All living things, in fact, have protein. So anything that's living has protein in it. It's a requirement for life. You need to have protein. So, you can like start looking up online, people have done all this research for you and figured out how to answer those questions appropriately. How do you get your calcium? How do you get your protein? All of those kind of things that come up. And so just looking it up and knowing what is your go-to, what are you going to say to people if they ask those types of questions?
Well, what would you say to people who think that eating meat is essential and a much more natural part of the human diet?
First of all, I would ask, what is it about what are you getting from meat that you're not getting from plants?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe people could say B12, but technically B12 isn't really a meat thing. It's a bacteria thing that animals are eating. So there is, I mean, unless this person can tell you what there is in meat, I mean, I guess you could say cholesterol, saturated fat, maybe. I mean, there are some plants with some saturated fat, but cholesterol is not found in plants.
Yeah.
So there are some things that you're going to be getting with meat that you don't want. You don't need extra cholesterol. It's not essential. Your body makes cholesterol. So yeah, so I don't see that anyone has an argument that you need to have meat, because any kind of nutrition that you get from it comes from the plant food that the animal ate. You're not getting it from the animal itself. Even the protein, the quote unquote protein that comes from the muscles, eventually, was an amino acid that came from plants.
I don't think I could ever go back, to that way of eating. I mean, first of all, the food is amazing. Oh my gosh. The food is just absolutely incredible, especially when you start getting into learning how to cook this way and prepare foods that don't have or need those things. And I find oh my God, I've looked back at some of the recipes, like for my mother or my family that we used to make. And there was this one salad. It was like a cup of oil, a cup of sugar. And I'm like now going, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, we didn't know.
or recipes like a cup of butter. And it's like, oh my God.
Uh, I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm like an oil sniffer now. Like I can tell, if I go to a restaurant and they tell me something's oil free, I'm like, nope, it's shiny. Nope. Or you taste it, I can taste that oil, because if you're not used to having it, you can really tell if it's in there.
Yeah, for sure. That and salt. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, big time.
Well, tell me what's the difference between a keto and a paleo diet, and what is the long-term impact? Because I always get these people that want to argue with me.
Okay, when I think of a keto diet, it's meant to put you into ketosis. That's where the name comes from. And ketosis is just your body's mechanism for dealing with starvation. And it's good. We like to have that because, back before we had access to food 24/7, which, not everyone has, but most Americans have access to food at any time. You run to the grocery store, the fast food place, get food at any time. We didn't always have that. And so there were periods of time that you would be fasting. And when you're fasting, you don't have any food, your body needs to still create energy so that you can walk around and find food, right? So that's what ketosis was meant to be, is this kind of like catch me, making sure that you can survive another day. So ultimately, it's about decreasing your body's primary source of fuel, which is glucose or carbohydrate. So a keto diet is meant to basically eliminate as much carbohydrate as you can, because that's what your body wants to create energy. So if you're not getting carbohydrates, then your body goes into ketosis and it starts using other things to make energy, like fat or protein. So that's kind of the idea behind keto. And then I think paleo is more like trying to eat like our ancestors. It tended to be whole foods, right? It's not processed foods. So you're getting rid of the processed foods, but you're still eating meat, vegetables, but you're not really eating grains and high carbohydrate, starchy foods. So I think that they are different in a way, but they both tend to be low carbohydrate. And so the implications of that is, first of all, if you're trying to minimize carbohydrates, that means that you are minimizing plant foods because plant foods contain carbohydrate. And you're also minimizing fiber, which is really important for gut health, microbiome, all of that. So by eating those ways, you are missing out on some essential things that you need to have optimal health. And then you are, when you're eating, say, a keto diet, that what that means is you're not really eating plant foods, so you're mostly eating animal foods. And animal foods, as we know, have cholesterol and saturated fat. That's what you're getting. And when you eat a lot of saturated fat, your cholesterol just rises like crazy. And now you're increasing your risk of heart disease. So that would be probably my number one concern with people doing it long term, is that increased risk of not only risking, getting a higher risk for cardiovascular disease overall, but you're also not getting enough nutrition, right? It's really hard to get all of the nutrients that you need when you're only eating animal foods and you're not eating some of the things we talked about earlier, like, berries that are high in antioxidants. You're not getting those protective effects that help you decrease your risks of cancers. And the other thing about it is I've had a lot of patients come to me where they say, I tried keto, it's just not sustainable. And then I started looking up what is sustainable, what could help me reverse my diabetes or get my blood pressure down or lose weight. It turns out it's a plant-based diet. And so then they come to me saying, I couldn't do it. I felt horrible. Now help me with this plant-based thing. So I will say that the other problem with it is it's not really a long-term solution. It's just not sustainable for people. It's not fun to eat. I can't even imagine, because I never liked meat, but to eat only animal foods and really hardly any plant foods just sounds like a horrible way to live.
All I can think of is the gut biome and how that must change dramatically, with that. And then if the gut biome is changing, what is that doing to, our the direct relationship between the gut biome and our brain? What is happening there? And yeah, just so many impacts of that.
Well, and and a big side effect is constipation,
Oh,
like constipation and then horrible diarrhea, because you don't have that fiber and the water. That's the other thing is, plant foods, you're getting a lot of fiber and water. And if you don't get enough plant foods with those things, you're going to have a hard time with having regular bowel movements. And that is no fun.
well, I have a question for you personally. What is your favorite whole food plant-based book and why?
I'm so glad you asked me that, because we are just talking about having good bowel movements. And you're like, well, now here's a personal question. Like, oh boy, what's she going to ask? But no, so my favorite whole food plant-based book for sure is The Starch Solution by Dr. John McDougall. That's my go-to.
Yes.
So anybody who's starting out, I always recommend that. And the reason I do is because it's the one book that changed my life. I had read other books, but that's the one that once I read it, I was like, okay, this makes sense. I can get behind this. It's so important to eat starchy foods for sustainability, having foods that fill you up and are satiating. And this is, I'm like, oh, I could eat potatoes and sweet potatoes and rice and beans and corn and all those wonderful things. But I think that it also breaks it down and makes it just really simple to understand why it makes sense that we are starch eaters. And I think it makes it something that feels doable, right? Because ultimately, like, the last week I batch cooked a bunch of sweet potatoes. And so for lunch every day, I'm just grabbing a sweet potato and then I'm quickly baking some frozen cauliflower or broccoli with it. And that's my meal, right? It's very simple. It doesn't need to be complicated recipes. And I think that's the thing that I really like about it. Even though I love cooking, I don't have time to do it very often. And so it's really just kind of putting things together quickly. And when you're just focusing on, okay, what's my starch? What are my veggies? What fruits am I going to have? It can be really simple.
If a person doesn't like, and I've heard this quite a bit, well, I don't like many vegetables. Oh, or I'm just such a picky eater. I hear this quite often. How can they be sure that they're getting a well-balanced diet?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is making sure that you are following up with a supportive doctor. So, you can get those labs done. You can check to make sure that things are looking good. And honestly, even though it is good to have variety because it does build up a healthy microbiome, you don't need it to be super varied. It's okay if you have a lot of the same things every day, as long as it's just not one or two foods and that's it, which I don't think I've ever met anyone that only eats one or two foods and that's it, like white rice and cauliflower and that's it, right? That would not be sustainable. But so as long as you're eating a plant-based diet that's fairly varied, then you really don't have to worry about that. I mean, you should be getting plenty of what you need. It's really just that higher variability just gives you, a more diverse gut microbiome. So the more, the better. And I will say this too, it changes. Your tastes change over time. The things that you didn't think that you liked, as you get farther along in this process are, you tend to find the beauty in these foods, and you really crave them and you enjoy them much more than you did before. It's just because your taste buds have been taken away from you. I mean, really, I mean, they've been coated in salt and sugar and oil for so long that you require these hyper palatable foods to even taste food. So then when you taste a real food like a peach or broccoli by itself, it doesn't taste very good. And you have to allow yourself time to get away from that kind of the junk food, the high salt, high sugar, high fat, to really enjoy those foods again. It's very possible. I mean, I crave very simple foods now that I never thought that I would.
Right? I think about, I think Dr. Alan Goldhamer talks about this, he shares this story, I've heard it several times, where this guy who was like working for the union and he had to get his blood pressure down. So they sent him they had a contract with him, and this guy didn't know what he was getting into. So he comes to the clinic and he's like, no vegetables, zero, has no taste for them. And he's trying to transition this guy. Like literally you take, a hamburger, he would take the lettuce off, the pickle, that person. And the beginning of this, he's like giving him vegetables to clean him out before, you start this fast. And he's just over there going, you know, he's like, "Are you okay? Are you choking? What's going on?" And he's like, "No, this stuff is awful. I'd rather just get my 12 gauge in the truck and shoot me now when I'm not looking. Please, I can't do this." And then he fasted, came back, and it was the same food. He goes, "Oh, your chef has gotten better." It's like, no, dude, your taste buds have changed, and you're right. And I think about
Yep.
that, that there are certain vegetables that, it took me a while to learn to like, and now I do. And yeah, so it's true. But oh my God, you should hear him tell the story. He's hilarious telling this. And it's
Oh
so
yeah. Well, and I had that same experience because I had a chance to intern at the True North Health Center. So I got to see that actually happen with a few patients where they were having to eat the food at the facility, which I immediately loved. I thought was the most amazing food ever. But if you're coming off the standard American diet, lots of junk food and processed food, it's not going to taste good to you, right? Um, and yeah, same thing where they did not like the food. They thought it was too bland. They couldn't believe like this was what they were going to have to eat once they left and went home. And then sure enough, after the fast, giving yourself a reset and then trying that food again, and they loved it. So it's possible.
it's so true. And coming off a fast, it's like, oh my God, I ate a banana. It's like, oh my God, do bananas always taste this good? Oh, it's so delicious. Or strawberries, oh, or berries. Oh, those are my new crack. That is my
Oh
crack.
yeah,
Oh, cherries. Oh, how delicious they taste. Oh my God, it's so amazing.
I
Anyway,
know.
I could wax poetic about food all night.
I know, me too.
And I have people that are caught in the pleasure trap. They're a food addict and they have a hard time with this. They have one toe in to this lifestyle, nine out, nine toes out. It's like I can't do this. I can't do this. What advice do you have for these people?
Pleasure trap is real. It gets all of us at some point. right? I mean, we're all human. We're built for that, right? We're built to try to seek out these hyper palatable foods because as humans, we didn't always have access to them. And they would actually, if we found some nuts, boy, that meant you might actually live a little bit longer than the person next to you because you had a little bit of extra fat on you and you could fast longer. You could go into ketosis longer. So it's very normal to fall into that trap. We are in a society now where it is impossible to not be tempted and be a part of it, right? We don't, unfortunately, we don't get to live in these beautiful plant-based bubbles with other plant-based people all the time. Restaurants that meet our every single need, we just don't get to have that. So it's very easy to get caught into that trap. So the first thing is you make sure that you read the pleasure trap so that you understand why we get into it. And there are some techniques for how to get out of it. The first thing is you got to figure out, like, why are you doing this? Why does this mean something to you? And you've got to have that really strong why. Because if you don't care enough about it, it's really hard when push comes to shove to really follow true to it, right? Those cravings are going to be so strong in your face that it's going to be impossible unless you have a really really good reason why. And I know you and I have talked about this before, Jean, but making sure that your environment fits with what your goal is, and that means your home, your work, people you hang out with, events that you go to, if you go out to eat, you've got to look at all of it and set up your life in a way that really is in alignment with what you want those goals to look like. And, for me, that means my house doesn't have any of that stuff in it, because even though I know better and I help people every day with this kind of stuff, if somebody put a bunch of, vegan junk food in my house, I would have a hard time staying away from it. I would, because I'm human. So I got to keep my house safe and clean so that when I'm stressed or I'm starving and I'm willing to eat whatever, that I go and grab that frozen cauliflower and get that baking, right? That's what's in my house. So I think that that's a big part of it. And then thinking about resetting too. If you're really struggling and you just need to reset, there are different things that you can do. Like you could do, say a fast where you finish dinner, say 6 p.m., and then you wait and don't eat until dinner the next day, right? Just give yourself 24 hours to just rest. And sometimes that's enough to kind of get you out of that and make you feel like, okay, now I can get back to it. Then of course you can go to True North and go do a longer water only fast. And sometimes people need that. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you need that kind of like really big kick to get through something like that, because it is not easy. And anybody who thinks that it is easy to get out of that pleasure trap, you're fooling yourself. It's hard. It's a journey.
I think you're right in breaking that food seduction. You've got to get out of your normal habits, your normal patterns. And I also want to put a shout out to Back to the Garden in Puerto Rico, because Asa and Joanna Frey also trained at True North, and they have a beautiful place in Puerto Rico. Just beautiful fruit trees and fruit that you've never seen before. And, they do fasting or juice fast, water fast, or just you want to get a healthy vacation, just get away from, to go and rest and chill and just be, and, taking the time to enjoy those, have somebody else cooking for you and making it, whole food, plant-based kind of thing. So it's important. And Frank Sabatino does that. He has several resets that he does throughout, and he's amazing in terms of water fasting. He's like a walking encyclopedia, that man. He's amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's another one that I get. I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to shop, prepare. They're not in the kitchen. They just never learned how to cook or deal or make or plan anything. How can they make this transition under these circumstances?
So a couple of things, it doesn't need to be complicated. Like I mentioned before, you don't need fancy recipes. It can be really, really simple food and, rice and beans and some veggies and salsa. I mean, you throw some stuff, even if you can find some low sodium canned soups. I mean, it doesn't need to be anything super fancy. You can find stuff in the grocery store that's quick and easy to eat. Jeff Novick, who's a dietitian, he came out with this where he talks about like the things that you need to just make sure you have in your house. You can throw together a meal at any time. And it's like canned food, right? Canned beans, frozen veggies, frozen fruit, whole grains. So things that you can literally just grab at any time that don't go bad, right? I have a ton of canned beans in my pantry. I have tons of frozen veggies and frozen fruit in my fridge. And then I do like these rice packets that are just like a single serving size of frozen rice that I throw in the microwave. So finding those things that are just really, really simple to throw together without having it be very complicated. You don't need to be a cook. You definitely do not need to be a cook. His packet is really nice because it kind of goes through kind of some of those things, like always having tomato sauce that you can throw, because you can throw tomato sauce, and I'm not talking marinara. It's like canned tomatoes, right? That you mix with rice and beans, and that could be a meal, and throw in some veggies in there. So that I think is helpful to just keep it really simple. And then now it's a lot easier to eat this way because of all the companies now that are coming out with all sorts of things you can just send to yourself. All these meal delivery companies like Whole Harvest has a meal delivery service. There's a really great Indian food one that I get that's called First Seed Foods. And it's just frozen Indian food that's all completely whole food, plant-based, oil-free. And I literally will take one of these, it's like a little pint size of like chana masala, heat that up in the microwave, heat up some rice, and that's my meal, right? Very, very simple. And then of course, Plant Strong. There are lots of places out there now where you can have food sent to you on a regular basis if you're just not somebody who wants to be preparing and cooking. What is going to give you the most benefit? Okay, eating more plants. Eating more plants is the goal. And if it means eating conventional products or using a microwave to eat more plants, if that is what makes it easier for you, then I think that ultimately is much more important. But it's okay if you've got those kind of things that you personally want to follow. That's okay. But I want to make sure that we also allow people who maybe don't have they don't have the money to afford organic. Right. That's okay. You can still eat this way and be successful.
Something else that I get from people is like, I can't afford this. It's like, wait, back up, buckwheat. Okay. Back up. Because first of all, we're eliminating meat, dairy, cheese, processed foods. That's the most expensive stuff that you're going to find in the supermarket. What do you mean you can't eat this way? Duh.
Yeah. It's because people see the vegan packaged foods at Whole Foods, right? That are expensive. But if you're really focusing on whole plant foods, you find those in the bulk section, the whole grains and the beans, potatoes. I mean, bagged potatoes. Food can be really inexpensive. I mean, I don't spend a lot on food, I'll be honest, but I'm eating very simply.
Right. Beans and rice, the most economical foods you could possibly imagine. Hello.
Yes. And one of the most delicious foods, I might add. I love beans and rice.
And I lived in Central and South America for like 13 and every country has got different ways they prepare it. It's just crazy. It's just
like Costa Rica, where they have I think it's pinto gallo.
Yeah.
The rice and beans that they do it's so delicious. Love it.
I know. And all the places that I've been, it's just different. It's just different. And the different beans that they like in favor, like Brazil, they love black beans. Oh, and the things that they could do with black beans, it's like, this is delicious. This is really. So okay, we're coming up on the hour, but
we just keep talking about food. That's the problem.
I know. Coming back to this.
We obviously love food.
What are some practical tips for people? We'll just leave it on this one. What are some practical tips for transitioning to a plant-based diet? Or I should say lifestyle.
Yeah. So if you're looking to transition, I think for a lot of people, now there are some people that'll go overnight, right? They watch a documentary or they have a health scare and they're like, this is it. I'm done. I'm going plant-based tomorrow. And they're successful at it because they've got a really, really strong reason why. I don't think that happens for most people. I think most people do more of a gradual transition. And I think that would be the tip that I have is, being patient with yourself, figuring out what works for you, making this more of an exploration and a journey of how am I going to make this work? How am I going to change my lifestyle to make this my new way of living? Because it isn't easy when you've got things kind of all set up the way that you normally do. You've got your meals that you're used to preparing, you've got your takeout that you're used to getting. Boy, you have to switch all that up. Trying to do that all at once can be really overwhelming. So I think just starting out slow, and whether that's doing maybe one meal a day, and a lot of times we say start with breakfast because that's a really easy one to make plant-based. It's very easy to just have oatmeal or cold cereal, smoothies, whatever it is that you like, and slowly work it into your lifestyle over time. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing right away, because ultimately the goal is how can you get closest to eating mostly plant foods for the rest of your life? And whatever gets you to that, whether how slow or fast you go, everybody's journey is going to be different. And so you've got to figure out for you what works best for you. How are you going to make this work in your life? Because people live with other people live alone. You've got work stuff. I mean, there's so many different aspects to everyone's lives that it's just not you can't just take a pill and then all of a sudden you know what to do. So it's really about figuring it out and trying things out. You're going to make meals that you don't like, and that's okay. That's not going to be in your rotation. And then you'll find that one soup that's just the most amazing soup ever. And then now you've got that soup that you can make a lot. So make it exciting, make it something that you're looking forward to, this journey and this exploration.
Oh, it's so true. And the excitement of trying new foods. It's like I just, yeah, it's really, really good. That's all I got to say about that. I mean, because I just keep finding more and more things. And I'm like, oh, this is delicious. This is great. Oh. And there was, as I was going through that journey, it was like the standard question in my house is like to my husband, is this a make again? That was the standard.
Oh yeah, is this a make again? Yeah.
Yeah, or yeah, I mean, because there were some recipes like the dog didn't even eat it. It's like, yeah, wow, no, and I think that's just as important to learn and know that what you don't like. And I say to people, because in the Plant-Based Academy, I mean, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn about this lifestyle. And so one of the things I say in the Plant-Based Academy is to try. You want to get those 10 to 12 recipes that you just can't live with that, because in previous you had those recipes you just rotated through. It was, Meatloaf Monday, Taco Tuesday, you just rotated through those same, 10 to 12 dishes. So I say, find that list of 10 to 12 things that you can't live without, and you focus on those. And then you add a couple more things in there. But I say try a new recipe or two a week, and just see. And if you don't like it, that's fine too. I say put a big X through that. And then I say to people, because in my program I use Google Docs and you print it out. So, I say put a big X through that and put that in a notebook. And so at the back of the notebook and go, yeah, no, I tried this one. This one sucked. And to understand, because there's some people that don't like cilantro or spicy foods or whatever it is, you're learning on this journey what it is that you do like and can make and adore, as opposed to what you don't. And it was the same way before. There's some foods that I never liked before. I mean, I hated seafood, just period seafood. It's like, and when you stop and think about what seafood really is, like, especially like things like oysters and shrimp. I mean, you're talking about the vacuum cleaners of the ocean. They're the filtration for the ocean. It's like, anyway, Dr. Davis, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here tonight. Honestly, I mean, you and I can talk forever, and I just got to put a plug in because she's certified in Massachusetts. For those of you who are local, just want to say that, okay? I just want to put that out there for us in Massachusetts, because especially here on the Cape, there's nobody. And, and especially also in terms of food and how food is medicine. They don't get it. On any level. So I just had to put a plug in there that you are certified here now. And
Yes.
Yeah, and at Love.life, they have the telehealth medicine. They're certified in all 50 states, by the way. I don't know how many certifications you have. You have quite a
12.
few. 12. We have 12
Yeah.
that we're certified in. So well done to you. Keep going, girlfriend, on that, picking
Yes.
those certifications. So, but thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here with us tonight and connecting with the Plant-Based Academy.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, and I would love to come back anytime.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.